Okay, we're going to get started. Hi again, everyone. Thank you for joining our webinar, How to Win Back Students and Improve Superintendent-Board Relations Through Excellence in Customer Service. We would like to share a few housekeeping items before we begin. All of your phones are muted for the duration of the call. You can ask a question or post a comment in the chat window. Take a look for the chat window now. Feel free to introduce yourself and say where you are from in the chat. This webinar will be recorded and sent to all registrants, plus it will be posted on the AASA website. AASA is pleased to bring you this webinar with K-12 Insight. K-12 Insight helps school districts deliver superior customer service to their communities through a powerful customer service platform and chatbot, research, and professional development. It is my pleasure to introduce Suhail Faruqi, founder and CEO of K-12 Insight. A visionary leader, Suhail is transforming public education through AI-powered customer service. He leads K-12 Insight's Let's Talk, the only unified service desk built for K-12, helping districts streamline operations and build trust with their families and communities. A sought-after speaker, he inspires education leaders at AASA, NSBA, and state superintendent events. Please welcome Suhail.
Thank you. Okay, good. And really, it's both a delight as well as an honor to be sharing this stage today with Coach and Doc Hinojosa. I'll have a chance to introduce him after my initial slides, and so I will move fast. And good afternoon and hello world. Thank you all for joining. I suspect nobody has shortage of things that are waiting for you all to do. So for you to give us a little bit of your time this afternoon, it is gratefully appreciated. Someone asked me not long ago that they didn't think that in their lifetime the word customer would ever appear in the context of public schools, because public schools have students and parents. They're not a profit and loss making organization. So what happened? And really the answer to that, if you want to take a slightly historical approach, it's rooted in the 200-year history of public schools in America, that they were started as a monopoly. Said differently, if 200 years ago, if you gave me a house plus zip, plus a zip code for a house, zip plus 4, I could tell you the elementary, middle, and high school that a child in that house would attend. Well, how the world has changed, slowly but surely. Today, no matter where you are staring at having to earn every child that comes to schools, and really that's how you get funded. And so the monopoly that lasted for 150 years has shifted. And there is another confluent sort of big event that's occurred, and that is the advent of social media. For the better part, at least let's just look at the 20th century. In the last century, if you wanted to control your brand, meaning if you wanted to control how people thought of you, your messaging and how people perceived you was largely in your control as schools. In 2012, Pam Moran, who was then the superintendent in Albemarle County in Virginia, in my home state, she wrote a blog piece which became sensational with superintendents. It was titled, How Twitter Tore Down the Walls of My Schools, which basically means there's a narrative on about schools all the time, as opposed to the pre-social media era, where press releases and articles that schools put out largely was when people thought about and how they thought about their schools. Any one of these two events, I think, would be big. The fact that those two shifts have occurred at roughly the same time, it creates both challenges and opportunities for schools. And if that challenge and opportunity is not handled well, I would say that it could be an extinction level event. And I don't want to be too dramatic. I would say that, and most of you have thought about this, if a school loses 4 to 6 students, depending on the state you're in, the amount of money that goes out of your funding formula for next year is the equivalent of the salary of a first-year teacher. And so if not handled right in the age of competition, schools could get systematically defunded. The consequences of those two events are stark, right? This was a study that on the theme of losing students, Austin ISD in 2017, they were losing 1,000 students a year out of their 85. $13 million is how it impacted the CFO. That basically meant they had to do what most of you are doing right now. You're figuring out what to trim, what to cut, how to take out some flesh and not get to the bone. Austin ISD said, look, we lose $13 million a year. We got to do something about it. So the board approved $1 million begrudgingly. They hired a research firm of high repute, and that firm is investigated, talked to a lot of people who had left, people who had stayed, came up with 7 reasons for why people withdrew their children out of schools, rank ordered them top to bottom. And the first 4 reasons they found had nothing to do with teaching and learning. It had nothing to do with the experience of the child in the classroom. It was solely about the experience of an adult when they interacted with the child's schools or central office. Stated differently, it had everything to do with the customer service experience of those parents when they were interacting with their child's schools. This thing has just, been, it has, you lose those students and you get systematically defunded. This student decline thing was documented by EdSurge about 2 months ago. They did a pretty big study. They listed how the top 100 school districts had done in the last 5 years. Notice there's a lot of negative when it comes to the traditional public school system. There's a couple of positives. IDEA Public Schools in Texas it went from 34,000 students nearly to 77,000 students, more than doubled. I think the percentage growth there is wrong. They more than doubled, which is more than 100%. And if you look at most of the traditional public school systems, you'll see that there is a decline. And I think it's a number that every school district, every principal should know. And so that's bad enough. The other thing we've found in the traditional public school system is that superintendents and their leadership team members, they tend to work extremely stressful jobs. I think you all know the average tenure of an urban superintendent is fairly short. And so a couple of years ago, we did a study we took 100 superintendents that had transitioned in a manner that wasn't planned, right? It happened rather suddenly. And we investigated, we looked at what the articles were, we talked to board members where we could, superintendents we could. We found that nearly 9 out of 10 cases, it had nothing to do with their ability to move the needle on teaching and learning. It was tied to friction with key stakeholders, mostly board members, and that led to a departure. Somebody gave up on you, or maybe you got tired and burnt out and you decided to leave suddenly in an unplanned manner. So the consequences are pretty dire. I've done this enough times where I've been a fly on the wall in a school district while visiting them and something happened. And I feel like I could construct a picture that if we could be flies on walls in school districts on any given day, when a board member calls a school district on a whole range of issues, some of which are put over here, you have to stop what you're doing and address it, because that's the amount of power that board members have. And I would say this is fairly common. Each of those instances, each call has a cost associated with it. Time cost and your political capital. And I would say you can look at them as symptoms that you all need to address, and school districts do that. But upon reflection, when you step back from it, really, most of those symptoms, if not every single one of them, has the same root cause. And that root cause is the fact that the issue about which the board member called you was at that point, on a sensitivity scale pretty high. You need to address it. A couple of hours or a couple of days ago was a low sensitivity, rather neutral issue. If that had been handled right, then that board member may not have needed to call you about any one of those issues. You're all going to make budget cuts, and I promise you, you're going to upset everybody with every single line item removed. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't make those hard cuts, but you need to give an avenue or a path for them to call you, channel that emotion that they experience. And absent that, you will be paying through a lot more calls, which will be more sensitive coming from board members. And along with that time, you will be losing a little bit in what we call the friction between board members and cabinet members. Even when you're executing what the board asked you to do, board members have a very interesting way to kind of wonder why that is still happening. And I'm not saying that there is a conspiracy behind it. That's just how human nature is. Many of you have thought that was a communication issue, because I'm introducing a new term, customer service, in contrast to the old communication or engagement. Now, when schools think about communication, they think about almost to a fault on the outbound side. And we ask that, that's an important part. You have to get the word out. The opportunity or the need here really is, what does your world look like if you were to turn that megaphone around? What happens when they're talking? How well are you listening? Where is that concern going? And, this is not too different from what they call the secret shopper experience, right? Have you gone around your campuses, buildings, different scenarios, undercover boss? Have you ever stood at a bus stop and put yourself in the shoes of a parent who's standing and the bus is late again, maybe second or the third time in a short span of time? Where do you find the number for who to call? And they end up calling a principal. Principal hasn't arrived yet because school's open a little bit later. What is the complete sort of experience of that person, as in the customer experience of that person? And I think in that lies some challenge for the traditional architecture of communication in schools when you turn that megaphone around. So I have a little bit of a sketch for what that architecture looks like. On the left side, you've got all stakeholders, internal and external. You've got students, parents, teachers, community members. Community member who's upset about the noise after a football game, or the light from a stadium, or they wanted to reserve some, room for something, or they heard a rumor that the bond was going to be too expensive or whatever. They come at you using whichever device is their favorite device. And I think we have to be very cognizant of that. I mean, that is definitely an equity of access issue. We have grandparents who are taking care of their children and their only device is a flip phone. And then they're calling whoever they best know. So this thing is ending up in a lot of silos. Teachers are hearing from people, parents are calling principals or assistant principals. And I think if you look on the right side, all those little dots, even in a 3,000 to 5,000 student district, you could get 30 to 40 such dots. Every dot is a silo, and silos are not good things because you do not know who's calling and for what reason. What we've found that this creates the big challenge because roughly 10 to 15% of incoming issues are not routine issues. They're urgent. They have brand risks for you. They may be safety risk, or somebody may be calling because something has happened, work has stopped. And so a system and a process that addresses the fact that these are not all the same, you need to be able to triage, is really, really important. So I just wanted you to take away some of what we've learned in working with nearly 600 school districts around the country. And so there is an essential journey needed for schools to go from just doing customer service, which is, you currently do that customer service, to achieving customer service excellence. And all that means is you need some intentionality around it. And there's a framework for it. And that framework essentially says you've got the people, you have processes, and then the question is, do you have tools? And then can you tie the three of them together? And so this webinar really doesn't dive deeply into it, but I do want to touch the fact that when we say customer service, we don't mean something that is loosely defined where every department, every campus has its own way, but an intentionally defined system of excellence, of growth, and that can be measured involving people, processes, and tools. That's what we'll be talking about. You've got the silos, you've got every department doing their own thing. And if you ever have that board member call, then I suspect the superintendent's office or your office as the deputy or assistant soup, you basically then create a fact-finding mission and you collect all the data. And that's just too 20th century. It's just very inefficient and you'll just not have enough time to ever be able to resolve that. So what is a solution? According to that framework that I told you, you take that tangled web that I showed you, in the earlier slide, which I'm repeating here, of the various nodes where people are coming in, and you unite that. You create a single place all of those are filed into and channeled into. It is really important to have a unified picture of who's contacting you, and why. And I'm showing you a different view of the same thing. Everything from attendance to, you go down the circle, you hopefully recognize your department. Some school districts have what they call the FACE, the Family and Community Engagement. Everyone has their queries. Finance gets questions from teachers, especially the first paycheck of the new year, because some of those numbers are off. And it's important to keep high-performing teachers. And their experience defines how they perceive you. All of these are silos, and this is not even an exhaustive set. And what we found that the opportunity in this lies in centralizing all of it, putting every single inquiry into a single system. And notice what we've done here is we've brought all contact points into a central system. Some of you, particularly if you have an IT orientation, you may say you've had an IT help desk. That's using the ITIL framework. We have that. We've unified it. We've built a platform that allows IT. We've built a platform that takes facilities where you have work orders. But then the same system also has HR issues when teachers and staff members have questions. The same system will allow a parent to ask questions to food services or a reporter asking a question of the communications department, a whistleblower thing, a tip system for reporting security, safety related stuff or bullying, et cetera, is all here in one place. And by the way, in order to provide that equity, you want to be able to support every single device. So on the circle here, you're seeing everything from the person with a flip phone or an in-person visit when person visits your campus and leaves, to when on the other hand, you've got somebody who can use a chatbot or a knowledge base. They don't have to wait till 8 o'clock next morning to provide that to you. So if there was one or two slides you want to take from here, this slide as it's composite is what I'd love for you to just see if there's something that's additive to your outlook on how schools operate, the operational angle of it. There are three things you need to have in order to attain customer service excellence. Okay, the first one is simplify the access, which is this previous slide. Everybody and going into this one place at the center of it, right? That's the access question. Meet people where they are, make it easy. Don't have three different systems where HR has an email, IT has a ticketing solution, facilities has a form that you fill out. Everybody should be, I shouldn't have to think when I need help. Maya Angelou, this is a Maya Angelou poster I'm sure many of you have seen, where it says that people may forget what you said to them, what you did for them. They'll never forget how you made them feel. And I think this is your opportunity to excel. And so if I have to search hard for getting help at the bus stop, I don't end up feeling good. And then there are two more terms that I'll introduce to you on this framework. One is called the SLA, the other is called the XLA. Those of you with IT background are chuckling because you never thought you'd see the word SLA thrown around. It's short for service level agreement, and it's technical speak for how long you take to address people's issues and resolve them. It's a metric that you should measure. Just like you measure test scores, we should measure how long it takes for us on average when somebody contacts our schools to see how long it took for us to resolve those issues. And we should find out which departments are taking long time because maybe there is a staffing shortage there, there's a volume issue, or there's a training issue, or there are issues they're dealing with that we hadn't had to deal with before. And on the other hand, we should do what Uber and Lyft do, which is ask them to rate their experience. And that is your quality control factor. That will determine you get an hour or a day ahead of an angry parent going to a board member or taking to social media. The XLA is short for experience level agreement. You agree to what kind of experience you'll provide in terms of a rating score people will provide. So this is sort of that innovation slide that I'd like to posit before you when we say not just customer service, but a customer service journey to excellence. Now, out of this comes a change in the cadence and the motion of a school district. Every school district that is on a customer service excellence journey will typically have this slide as part of what is called the cabinet. This is the superintendent's cabinet slide, where you take a minute or two, no more than three certainly, to show every department, every campus, every trending topic or issue as a dot on a 2x2. And I just want to give you sort of a slight read of what I have here. On the x-axis, I'm showing you the response time. So if you're responding fast, you're on the right side. If you're responding slow, you're to the left side. On the y-axis, we're showing you the XLA, the scores that people give you. So if your score is high, you're above. Otherwise, you're on the lower end of that graph. If you're both fast and you're getting a high score, you're a blue dot. If you are deficient in one, you're a gray dot. And if you're deficient in both, you're a red dot. And notice I've hovered over one dot like registration. They have a customer experience score of 8. They are taking 0.4 days or to respond. 0.4 days is 3.2 working hours. So this system automatically tracks how long you're taking it. I can tell you if you're responding fast, you've significantly de-risked this reaching a board member or somebody in a chatter or on social media. And if they're giving you a high score, clearly they're fans. Uncovering this, shining the light on this, the whole sunshine being the best disinfectant is the biggest control you have on making sure that you do not lose students and that there isn't an everyday friction between you and board members. So I'll come to this last section for why we do this, right? And I put this out here, and I'll sort of come to it in just one more second. I'm sure Coach Hinojosa will address it. It's 2025, which means we are kind of in free fall from the ESSER funding era. And there's a huge amount of scrutiny for what we're doing. So really, should school districts even spend time, much less money, looking at it? And I'm here to tell you that this would be your best idea to take back to your superintendent. If you're not a superintendent, your CFO, if your CFO is not on this call, because there is documented evidence that shows that customer service excellence produces three benefits, all are tied to dollars. The first dollar is operational efficiency. And I will, ask you to challenge yourself on this. The right technology frees us up. Like, think about it. When before Google, we had to research a topic. Some of us had to go to libraries to do that. When Google came, what would have taken us a week was a matter of a couple of hours. And with ChatGPT, even that hour that you'd have spent on Google and clicking on links, ChatGPT can give you a synthesis of everything you needed to know using one prompt. So that operational efficiency that technology is enabling, it is possible for the right tool to free up staff time. I'll give you an example. If you have transportation department, when parent Faruqi calls to say, why is this bus late? The first 2 minutes is spent asking who's calling. And when they say Faruqi, you ask them to spell their name. Then you go to a second window, you ask them, what's their child's, which child? And then you look at the third system to find out which bus stop. It takes about 8 minutes for you to figure out, how to help this parent who's calling in. What if all of that, as soon as the phone rang, it flagged my name for you? It showed you my name. It showed you how many children I have. It tells you which route they each ride. And it's tied to the system that's tracking the location of buses. So you say, sorry, that bus is late. Sorry for the third time in the last week. We'll do better. And you give them some reason. You shaved off a lot of time. And so that operational efficiency is a very big one. There's a bunch of data here that shows that school districts can defend and win market share. I take you back to the Austin ISD study. Again, you don't have to, if you are in a situation where you are either growing or declining, in both cases, there's a net activity where competition, whether it's charters, vouchers, or a neighboring district, is waving a carrot at some parents, and your ability to defend that market share you have grows. And the third one may not be dollars, but in this case, it is trust dollars. It is political capital. The friction between board members and school administrators is a very costly friction. So in all these three cases, frankly, we're saying that this is an ROI issue. I have a link here. I'll give it to you in just a second. Rice University has been doing a lot of study on how public schools evolve into the 21st century. And this is a straight quote out of here. I don't need to read it to you, but you have to embrace customer focus. You need to become customer centric. On the operational efficiency side, one of our partners, a school district in Florida, Pasco County, basically said they literally went around after about a year and a half of implementation. And they said, if we're spending $1 on the program to get intentional high quality customer service, what are we getting back in return? And they found that it was $1.68, $1.70. And that was about a year and a half in the program. The journey could be a little bit, paced. And so they're probably closer to $3 a student, because on that trust capital that I told you about with board members, right? This system has a critical alerting capability, which means as soon as something comes in that is sensitive, it will immediately alert you before it reaches board members. So you can see safety and well-being. If a parent writes, the computer using AI can assert that this is a parent who might be pulling their child out. So school choice alert. If somebody's writing you and the tone reflects that you're being non-responsive to them, they will catch that and they will alert you. And by you, I mean on the right side, you'll see you can create a committee for school choice, and they can react immediately to it, because that becomes your stitch in time. It becomes how you're ahead of the issue as opposed to a little bit behind. And of course, the system needs to be flexible so that it can evolve. So the executive order on immigrants that came out 2 months ago, many of you urban school districts are dealing with that. You have attendance loss. Students are not coming to school. Some teachers have disappeared, apparently. And so a lot of what reaches you is the anecdotal, and there's a tyranny to the anecdotal. What this system allows you to do is keep your pulse on top of it. My conclusion is customer service excellence in times of fiscal deficit is really, it becomes a do it now because there is the economic uncertainty, not simply because of despite it. And so if you were curious as to what those studies are that I just cited for you, you can take a scan of that QR code. And I'll put that again front if you don't get a chance right now. But it is now my pleasure to introduce you to Doc Hinojosa, also known as Coach. Dr. Hinojosa is a superintendent. He has spent 27 years simply as a superintendent, nearly 4 decades as administrator. He has been a superintendent of 2 distinct school districts that are in the top 25 largest school systems around the country. He's currently the superintendent in residence of the training program for next generation of superintendents started by the Council of the Great City Schools, which is a consortium of the largest urban school districts. And then he is now training what is called the Michael Casserly Urban Executive Leadership Institute for Superintendents. So any aspiring superintendents here, this is your opportunity to get to know him and get a part of that cohort. And I think the rest that you need to know, honestly, even 10 minutes wouldn't be sufficient to introduce you, Doc. So I think your narrative will speak for itself. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Suhail, and I want to thank AASA, and I was a member of AASA for almost 30 years, and I want to thank K-12 because K-12 took my idea and took it to scale, and I'll explain that a little bit later. I also want to thank Corwin, and thank you all for sticking on the call. And I don't think very many people have dropped off as I've been monitoring the registrations, but first of all, thank you. I wrote a book, and this is part of the book. And part of it was my experience, and I've had the opportunity to serve in a lot of different communities. And we'll go to the next slide, please. So how did all this get started? So in the 1990s, I was a superintendent of a 3,000 student district on the Mexican border. And then later I got a chance to work at an education service center like a BOCES in many of your states. And I had the opportunity to go to the Harvard Business School for strategic perspectives for nonprofit management when I was the service center director. Because as a service center, you don't get tax dollars. You have to find how to drum up business from the districts, and you get a little bit to open your doors, but you don't get money to really make a difference. And so when we went to Harvard, they do the case study method. And at Harvard, the session I was there, they did 3. One of them was about the broken window theory in New York, and how Giuliani claimed the credit for it, but it was Chief Bratton who executed and got rid of crime with a non-conventional idea. The second thing, big case study was Scandinavian Airlines, SAS. It was one of the best airlines in the world at that time. And they had a customer service model that I saw and I replicated, and I'm going to talk about it in just a moment. But also we've seen other organizations, and I'm going to save Southwest for last because that's kind of personal. If you haven't been to a Ritz-Carlton, just go one day. Just drive up there, get your valet park, go in and have coffee. And what you will notice is an incredible customer service, high culture environment. And for you superintendents in the audience, I hate to tell you this, you can delegate anything and everything except culture and climate. If you delegate that to one of your assistant superintendents or a chief or your communications person, you've lost the battle. And so that's why this is so important. Chick-fil-A is another great example. In my opinion, I lived in Atlanta. Their food's not very good. But I was walking by Love Field the other day. They have a Chick-fil-A line that goes all the way to the back. And they're not even open on Sunday, and they make mega money. Why? Because they treat people like they're the only people on earth. And then Southwest is personal. It started on a napkin. They had low charge for bags. We don't do any of these things. I mean, you get to pick your seat and all that. And then in a couple of years ago, well, the original founder has, passed away. So they had some succession planning, but now a financial activists got on the board, and now their whole customer service model. In fact, American Airlines just sent me an offer that I can transfer all my points to them now that Southwest's culture is up in the air. Just what Suhail described to you, that if you mistreat your people, your community, your staff, your students, they're not going to stick with you because they got options. There's no longer a monopoly in public education, especially some of you that have vouchers in your state. So the core four. So that's what is the core four? Let's go to the next slide. And I learned this from Scandinavian. Focus, it was their first core, and I adapted that to student achievement. Fast, if you're a central office, you either provide a product or a service. Same thing if you're a school secretary, you either provide a product or a service. And then friendly in your approach to all. Back to the comment that was made earlier about making people feel a certain way. So I started this in 1995, and I took it with me from El Paso to suburban Austin to suburban Houston to Dallas the first time to Cobb County, Georgia, and brought it back to Dallas. All of those years, I only had one measure. The principals got to evaluate the central office on these core four. Let's go to the next slide. But when I came back to Dallas, I learned a few things. They all needed a tagline because they were making fun of the four F's. You know how people can get secretaries and principals and coaches. They can kind of get loose with their ideas. But so we had to come up with a tagline. So focus on student achievement became we transform students' lives. Fast, urgency for all. I mean, we'll get to it as soon as we can. Strive for the yes. You can't always tell people yes, but you can strive for the yes. And then making memorable moments was having fun. So this is what we started measuring. And the thing, when I ran into K-12 Insight, was when I no longer just got the principal's opinion. Now I started getting parents' opinion. I started getting staff opinion. I started getting students' opinion. If you can't get your check, and all you do is hit a button called Let's Talk, and it asks you what your issue is. And one time I was doing a search recently for a superintendent in South Carolina, and I didn't know how to get in touch with him. So I went to the website and I just hit Let's Talk, and I got a note that said within 24 hours someone will reach out to me. Sure enough, I got in touch with the superintendent. He ended up staying there because he was happy. But and then I got to rate my experience. We didn't have any of that when we started this customer service model that I had for over 20 years. Well, maybe 15 years until I met Suhail about a decade ago. And then we had the opportunity then once we had some new money in Texas at the time with House Bill 3, my staff wanted this so much because they saw the power, but our reviews were only from the principal's eyes. It wasn't from the community, wasn't from the board, it wasn't from the staff. So next slide. So then now we started getting it from everybody. So it applied to every department, every school, and we got multiple measures and we got it in real time. And how long did it get? Did you have a response? And what was the quality of the response? Next slide. So research and evaluation would compile this, and they say how friendly is teaching and learning? How flexible is HR? How friendly is finance? Not very friendly is what we heard from our people. The finance is just not friendly. They just want to get the checks out. But like that, I could have a conversation with the head of every department, every division. Next slide. So we would report this, we would analyze it. I got the principals to fill this out over the holidays. Then we got all the Let's Talk data. And then I would meet with each chief at their quarterly evaluation conference to go over the results. Then I would meet with the rest of the senior staff, and we would stack rank them. We would rank every department. Even if everybody was in the 80s, someone was 88 and someone was 81. So it just showed that we had to deliver for our customers. Next slide. So the next few slides are what I believe in the 1990s, Dallas had 5 superintendents in 5 years. One went to federal prison. In the 2000s, people wanted us to be successful, but they didn't believe we could. And then during my second term, we went from one of the worst districts in the country to arguably one of the best districts because it inspired a lot of these things. And without a doubt, that this customer service model that we had led to these things. We would survey the parents, the staff, the taxpayers. My valuation was 20% was customer satisfaction. 20% was financial stewardship, and 60% was student achievement. And so I think by me putting myself accountable, and we would measure it every year and show how much progress we made. Dallas went from a culture of entitlement to a culture of accountability. It took a couple of decades, but because we stuck with it, it inspired many other things. Next slide. Texas, we're the godfathers of accountability. Yeah, some of y'all are from Texas. I know you know that. But we're the only district in Texas that the state of Texas allowed us to have our own accountability system. 50% is from the state, 30% is value added, and 20% is what staff and student experience based upon all this data that we had that we could prove up to the Texas education agencies that we would hold ourselves accountable to a high standard. Next slide. We got the name, instead of A through F in Texas, everybody else in Texas is A through F. We're accomplished, breakthrough, competing, developing got dropped off on the transfer of our slide, and focus. If you're a focused school, you get more money. If you're an accomplished school, you get more freedoms. And to this day, Dallas doesn't have to deal, or you do deal with a scarlet letter because you can't local your way out of a D or an F. But we were tougher on ourselves than the state of Texas. We would have had more A schools than we had accomplished schools because we add culture and climate to the formula and value added. Next slide. Well, this really taught us to listen. We wanted to measure the student experience. We had a team board that we met with them that give us input on this. We had a goal. The most powerful goal that we had was that we wanted every student to participate in at least one extracurricular activity. And what that bought us is 300 robotics teams. We had to reserve the convention center in downtown Dallas for our 300 teams to have their STEM expo. We had overweight Latino boys showing up on a Saturday because now they could be involved in esports. Because we listened to the community, listened to the students, listened to the staff about, we completely did away with in-school and out-of-school suspension and replaced them with reset centers when we found that our data was overwhelmingly terrible about suspensions. Next slide. It also inspired a lot of our strategic initiatives that we pulled off in our second. Instead of fighting charter schools, instead of whining about charter schools, somebody asked me, "Are you a fan of charter schools?" I said, "No, I'm a fan of great schools. I just don't know many charter schools that are better." So we started creating our own public school choice strategic initiative. And we created a biomedical school on the campus of UT Southwestern. We created an international baccalaureate school on the only HBCU in town. SMU and Toyota have a school in West Dallas. We have an all-girls STEM school. We have 5 Montessori schools. So we said that we had more intellect, we had more brain power, we had more accountability than the charters. And so that's what this did. Also, now 11% of our students graduated from high school with an associate's degree through P-TECH. New York had 1 P-TECH. We now had 23 P-TECHs. And then Career Institutes, the only complaint I got about P-TECH is the kids said we didn't get into the magnet schools, and we didn't get into advanced placement, and we didn't get into P-TECH. What about us? So we created that other where you can get aviation, you can get cybersecurity, you can get mechatronics. We have dual language. Those were programs that were created because we had the customer service, and the core 4 inspired that. And let's go to the next slide. We had to have some partners. Engaged to Learn was one of our coaching partners that coached our principals and our head of operations and head of maintenance about how to do customer service. K-12 Insights is the one that gave us all the data to go to scale. We would have never been able to do this. Apple helped us transform all of our libraries into Apple stores. Stanford School of Design is the one that helped us come up with the school models that became so popular. So once you accept the journey, and by the way, Dallas now is the only district in Dallas County that is growing students. Dallas lost about 75 students to Richardson ISD, a very affluent suburb, but we gained like 600 students from Richardson ISD because of the opportunities that were being offered in Dallas. And it's in my book, and I'm convinced that this customer service mantra and attitude and delivering help make things happen. Next slide. So this is we're going to open it up for questions, but I always like finishing all my speeches with three things. Look to the past with pride. Be proud of who you are and where you come from. I'm proud to be an immigrant. I'm proud to have grown up in the inner city of Dallas, which is called because you got to have everyone is a set of our experiences, and especially for the women in the seminar, you had to overcome so much to be where you are now. In the present, be present. Nothing great happens in the absence of enthusiasm. And in the future, you need to look to the future and hope and aspiration. And I know everybody is all concerned about where we are in this country right now and all the turmoil. But I'm an optimistic person. The only way to control the future is to create it. And I think this is a model of how you can create the future for your students against all odds. So that's my story. I'm sticking to it. I'll turn it back to Suhail and Miranda to see what kind of questions we have, or we'll take your questions. So, or Suhail, you've been in a lot of presentations with me. You may want to facilitate some things that have been brought up at some of our sessions.
Thank you, Doc. And yes, I would like to do that. One of the things that's asked here of me is to share a little bit about where to download that presentation. The study is from Pasco County Schools in Florida, and the $1.7 for every dollar spent. That entire study is available online. I'll put that URL back here for you to take a look at. The other question that's asked is, will there be an opportunity to do a demo? So this one has some link, some of the resources that we cited in here. And with your permission, what I'd like to do is just quickly show you really what the triangle that says Access, XLA, SLA looks like. Okay, so I'm hoping you've had enough time to take a look at it. But ideally speaking, what customer service looks like in a school district really is people now come to your website, not necessarily to do either of the two things, right? They're not coming here to look at those nice pictures, as nice as they are. And they're surely not coming here to then search and find by going from one page to another, looking at the various menu sections and areas. They want answers fast. Notice what draws your attention here is it says chat with us. I'm a PS chatbot. I can click there and I can chat. You do want to give people an option to self-service customer service, and you need to be very intentional about it. In the age of generative AI, I'm assuming you can still see my screen, Doc. Would you just give me a thumbs up? Yes. In the age of generative AI, you are able to delegate all of that to a computer, and that is part of your operational efficiency. Some of you will say, well, wait, don't we want people in the loop? Don't we want people to help people and personalize it? Of course you do. But out of 100 people, maybe there's 10, 20, some days 30, maybe 40 people whose issue doesn't rise to where they need to talk to someone. If I'm sitting with my family and planning our summer break, and I'm like, exactly what day does school close? What's the last day of schools? And you may have different last day of schools for elementary, middle, and high school. This system allows you to prevent that one phone call from coming to a principal the next day. And you multiply that by the number of schools for the number of issues, you have reduced the call volume. You've reduced the amount of time your staff is taking through self-service. Now, it's tempting to put a chatbot, but a chatbot is not what we're looking to do. We're looking to achieve customer service excellence, because every so often you'll have an issue asked by someone where the answer is not served in the content that you fed the chatbot. So you want to be able to redirect them to this area where they can then ask a question. And if the two are integrated, then I don't have to ask my question again. I can see the entire history. You want to offer all the languages that you want to prominently give. If I'm looking for transportation related help, notice I can just start typing and it narrows it down for questions. And so I can now pick the topic, and you can see in this drop down nearly every topic that you can think of that'll be coming in, including for the Board of Ed. And that's especially to the Board of Ed. You want to put it here so that people can select that. And the minute they select it, the minute I select that, notice there's a custom form associated with that. And this allows me to redirect this automatically. When I submit this button here at the bottom, it automatically gets directed to the person who is best suited to answer that question. That's the access part. We solved that access part. For IT service management, I'm logging in here. What you're seeing on your screen is I'm logged in using your single sign-on as a teacher. When I log in here, you can see I can request support for IT. When I do that, because the system is integrated, all my devices that I have are in a drop-down. So I can just select which device I choose. So I can complete this ticket easily. It gets routed depending on the device type or my campus to the right agent. On the right side, you can see a list of all known issues is available. Why do you want that? Because if Wi-Fi is down at a campus, you don't want, all of your teachers, all of your students to submitting a ticket. I can see that Canvas is down. I can immediately click on a place and it'll allow me to track that moving forward. So I don't have to complete that ticket. That's one less ticket for you to manage. And there's a whole ITIL configuration called problem management. And that's not just an IT issue. Sometimes if there's a gas leak in a neighborhood, this came up with one of our school districts. We had 45 people reached out and said, oh, why are buses late? Even though they got a notification. Now you're going to reply to 45 people. Using this particular feature, you can consolidate all of those 45 into one issue. And then whatever you reply to one, it goes to all 45 people. So huge efficiency issues. I'm going to show you the use case of a teacher in a classroom. So notice, because this is a portal and I'm a teacher, you can see it shows who I am. You can see I'm a very busy teacher. I'm teaching a lot of classes. You can see all my past requests that I've made is consolidated here. How many of them have been asked? How many have been resolved? All my devices are shown here. All my classes are shown here. And I notice that I'm an elementary school teacher. I see a child whose device is broken. I can click on that. I can go to whichever class and I can see the child. All my students are here. I can see their devices. I can request support for this child. And notice in this case, I'm requesting support for a student. The student's name is here. The requester's name is here. And you can do this for all of your service functions. It's just an enhanced capability that just saves a lot of time and brings everything together. So again, all of that is on the service and access part, simplifying it, making it easy for people. I want to just share with you what happens when somebody submits a request. So this is the inside of the help desk. I'm logging in. I'm seeing that all of the issues that are here can be seen. Now I'm logging in with super user access. Typically, I would log in and just see the issues that are assigned to me. So there is very good role-based access, which means each person in each department only sees what issues, tickets, work orders, call it help requests, call it a dialogue, was for them, because you've programmed that. And by the way, you don't need to fidget with it. If you have any kind of Active Directory system where you've said this person is responsible for this, when there's a transition, person A switches and there's a new assistant principal, that person can see automatically all of the issues for the new building in which they're an assistant principal. So I come in here, I can sort of see these issues. Let me just go back and pick one up and show you the simplification that occurs. Notice Emily Weinberger is here. I click on this. I can see Emily is a student, has contacted us quite a few times. You can see the entire contact history. If you can see it on your screen, I'll just see if I can make this a little bit larger. 204 and 219, those numbers. This is synthetic data, but assume somebody had contacted you a lot of times. They were a frequent flyer. You could just click on that and you can see every single time this person had contacted you. So the entire history, and of course, you'll see that based on whether you have permissions for that or not. This person, I can sort of see their entire contact history here. I can see their detail, which building, what their phone number and email address are. and the history is also available here. There's a full management. I can reply to this person. I can ask AI to find an answer to this question. I can go into response templates. If this person was asking me a question, which was a frequently asked question, then my communications department had compiled a really nice high quality response on bus routing and bus zone routes and rezoning. I don't have to type that answer. It's all there. And back to school season, student registration, on a whole host of issues like the executive order that we talked about. You don't want people to make up answers. You want to put high quality answers there, which will then delight them. So they'll feel happy, that poster case of Maya Angelou. Notice on the bottom left side, you'll see I have the telephony system over here. So I can turn that on. Certain people will have the ability to answer phone calls on their computer. They don't need to come into the office, for example, for transportation. You want to give that to them right away. So that's available to them right there. And the last thing I'll show you really is the dashboard. This is what drives. This is the pulse of why you want to bring everything into one place. If you're a principal, if you're a superintendent, you went to a building and you saw that the phone was ringing a lot, I'm sure you've thought to yourself, I wonder why the phone's ringing a lot. And then I'll ask you the same question in return. Do you know why the phone rings at all? Do you know how many times does it ring? Do you know what the seasonally variant topics and themes are? Do you know if there's any risk backed in any one of those calls if the issue is not handled right? How would you like to have that information at your fingertips without having to do anything at all? And that's what this system does. So on this system, really the SLA and the XLA are these two boxes right here. This is your XLA. Every time somebody visits a building, every time somebody contacts any department or a campus, you ask them at the time that the person who's responsible for resolving that issue says, I've resolved this issue, you ask them to rate the experience. Notice in this case, that score is 8.7 on a 10-point scale. Right below that, notice it's giving you what is your average response time. Now, you can ask yourself, is that good or bad? 2.9 days, that's roughly 3 days. That's 24 business hours. Is that good or bad? You can create a cohort of your peer district. So, if you're a small district, you can ask for, districts that are like you, and you can benchmark yourself. So because we have several hundred school districts in our system, I can give you the average score. So notice here, your score is 8.7. The median score is 8.4. So hooray, celebrations. You ought to put that in front of your board and say our score is better than the median response time of our peer districts.
So we had one question I want to address.
Yes.
Somebody asked a question about professional development. The short answer is yes. But when you get this data in front of your people and they don't want their scores to be bad, and if it's such an important issue for the district, let me give you an example. We used to have a wait time of 6 months to get a work order fixed in our maintenance department. And so once we did some training, and by the way, we set up a professional learning community for the maintenance department, and they got trained on how to respond. All the trades would come together. They would look at work orders together, and instead of blaming each other, or no, it's not, it's the carpenter's job, no, it's the locksmith's job, or no, it's somebody else's job. Then they learn how to problem solve these work orders. And the maintenance department, which was ranked 10 out of 10, moved all the way up in the top 3 because they use professional learning communities to set up the processes by which they were going to respond. 6 months went to 6 days about how long an age work order was. And we could see it in real time by looking at this data that's real, because then we focused on them and we made them the example. Now, we didn't mandate PD, but we said, look, if this is important, we don't want to keep losing parents to other districts because we're not responsive, or we don't want to lose teachers or principals because we can't get a work order done. But if absent of having all this information, then you could measure it. And, we ended up promoting that guy from head of maintenance to head of operations, chief of operations, because we knew he could deliver. So yeah, PD is important to it. It's part of it. But if you don't have the data, you don't know what to do PD on. So I wanted to make sure I addressed that question.
Thank you. You're saying data-informed PD is better than scattershot, just hoping it sticks. Not only that, there's a report here that I'd like for you to see, which is called, which was the 2x2 that I showed you. And again, remember, this is synthetic data. What this tells you is you can't do a one-size-fits-all PD. Obviously, these folks here, actually, there's a version of this report that I can show people's names again. So literally, right? And again, synthetic data. So this is Yanni, and this is Ben, and this is Kalila, and this is Ryan. So you can see this is Matt, right? Now, Matt needs a very gentle, formative assessment type view, kind and right, not a punitive conversation that says, Matt, can we help you? Because Matt is taking 6 days to respond. Pardon me, almost how many days is it? Just under 3 days to respond, and his score is 6 on a when you've established a standard to be at 7. And Matt needs a different kind of training than Sarah does or Anisha does. So a differentiated PD is really the goal here. This data really gives you a picture into really what's going on in your school district. This is called the Superintendent's Weekly Cabinet Report. A version of this is your board's report. Once a month, we suggest you put this performance data in front of your board, where you highlight these scores that I just showed you, along with the benchmarking data. Because what that does is if you pre-negotiate with your board, your response time and your CX score, your XLA, if you negotiate with them SLA, XLA, and those numbers need to be on a continuous improvement scale from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. You go from 8 to 8.3 to 8.8 maybe, and a response time from 3 days to maybe 2.5 days to 2.2 days, or maybe at some point better. What you will get from them, hopefully you can extract from them a promise that if you share that data on a monthly basis and show them growth and progress, then when their neighbor or favorite resident of the community calls them about their one gone bad case of customer experience, they don't have to shake everybody and ask them to stop everything stop everything they're doing and address that issue and hold a hearing on it, because it doesn't behoove board members being in the weeds on one case, as long as the average performance is within certain guardrails of improved and growth scenarios. So this gives you a view into it. And by the way, this example that I showed you in the previous one, the comparison report with departments, you can see all your departments here, and they can see it. The day that you do cabinet report, you can ask the system to email each person their 2 KPIs, their SLA and XLA. Sunshine is the best disinfectant. We've noticed that very soon, shortly after superintendents start to view this in their cabinet, there are very few red dots on their cabinet left, because people know that there's going to be accountability for this. They work it out with their team on how to get better. And the next thing you know, board members just generally hear that, hey, if you put it in Let's Talk, you do get a response. And then that rumor starts to spread that if you put in Let's Talk, you get a response. Then people do not feel the need to go to social media. There will be less traffic on Twitter, now called X, or Instagram or Facebook, because the frustration source when it drives it has been eliminated. So that's a good high-level view into this, and I'm just looking to see if there are any questions. Miranda, you can unmute and share with us if there are any.
We didn't have any additional questions. We had one from Kelvin, who was asking about professional development.
Yeah, we just addressed that. Yeah.
We just addressed that. So I think that's it. And we're being told from AASA that it's time to wrap up as well.
So what I will do as a last thing is just put that other ROI case here. This is the slide that has the QR code for you to read about the ROI case. And if there's a school district that you want to learn about, a school district like yours, with the hundreds of school districts we have, there is usually one, either size-wise or urban, suburban, rural, that has had success with this. Customer service is not just for a particular type of school districts. It's for all types of school districts. And as I said, you're already doing it. What you want to do is achieve customer service excellence to reduce the board cabinet friction, to win back and safeguard your student market share, and get the operational efficiency, which is needed for this time. So with that, Ellie, if you're still there, I'll turn this over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Just a reminder that the recording will be sent to all registrants and will be made available on AASA's website. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Doc.
you.